It absolutely changed my life to learn my strengths. And I was able to finally let go of the person I was trying to be. And I was trying to be like my family and my parents. And we hear that from people. So it can be life-changing to discover your strengths. And we are on a mission to do that.
Welcome to Powered by Instinct, a podcast for professionals who think about how your fundamental nature drives performance. In each episode, Kolbe experts will interview top performers, team leaders, consultants, and coaches to discuss identifying team members' strengths, aligning those strengths with their jobs, and optimizing individual and team performance. If you're interested in getting more done more naturally, then let's jump in.
Amy, we're talking today because we realized we did the book, Do More and More Naturally, and we've talked about the book, but what is doing more and more naturally and why do people care?
There is this balance between doing more. I think a lot of people talk about doing more. We've all listened to podcasts or read books, or there's gurus telling us how we can do more. There's so much focus on that. And when I ask people the question, have you taken that advice and put it into play, and are you still doing those things? People laugh hysterically, like, no, of course I'm not doing those things anymore, because it wasn't sustainable, because generally not all of that advice works for you. So what's missing in this how to be more productive formula is sustainable high levels of performance. And that is this magic that is the do more naturally part, right? It is about, yes, you can do more. We want you to achieve really big goals. We want you to accomplish what matters to you most. But if you're missing this piece that is alignment to your strengths, you cannot sustain that. And the only way to be sustainable and find joy, and the joy of accomplishment can be great as long as you're using your strengths to get there. And so people really resonate with the fact that too much of doing more is complete burnout.
I'm sure you'll remember when we were thinking about the name for the book and kind of what to call it. When the whole do more part came in, I kind of pushed back because, my thought is people really don't want somebody else telling them to do more. Like, oh, load more crap up on my plate. Like, people don't want that. But the reality is they want to get more done. They just don't want to feel like there's more kind of busy work. Right. So some of that to me is, well, what is it that you really care about? But more importantly, is really the more naturally part, because since people do want to accomplish more things, and there's a lot that even if they don't want to do it, they kind of have to, figuring out a way that we can help people tap into their strengths so that they can get that stuff done and it doesn't feel like, and it isn't actually as draining as it seems like it has been.
Right.
So to me, that's kind of the core of it, is figuring that out and not having people think, and this was another part of, well, this is why I pushed back on the do more. I do worry sometimes that the more naturally part sounds like, oh, Kolbe just believes you can just do whatever and it doesn't matter. And that's not it.
Right. Yeah, let's talk about that, because this model was born from the fact that we have so many great clients and consultants who have been working for a while now to be in the zone and do things more naturally. But even that can go too far. So Kathy Kolbe told us years ago, success is the freedom to be yourself, but it's not freedom at all costs. You're still responsible to get results, and the most important results either for your business or for you, whatever you're doing. So I got so frustrated when leaders were telling me, hey, this more naturally thing is really great, but now some people are using it as a cop-out. So the model that we came up with is really balance. So think about the fact that where are you on the doing more scale? Are you doing things and you're really busy, or are you productive? So ask yourself, are you spending your time and your energy on more of what is most important and getting you the most important results, not just activities? So you had already said that. The more naturally thing is, how much are you in the zone and free to be yourself? But it has to be both. It cannot be just one or the other.
Yeah.
More naturally, I think we all know a business leader who has achieved such success, and they finally have this freedom of time, and they're getting to do things their own way. And they have all this pent up, misdirected energy, not going toward anything that really matters to them. So it's a balance.
Yeah, and it's not just leaders. I was making a connection as you were talking in my mind, and you and I have talked about this a little. The recent, well, depending on when you're listening to this, recent rant from Jamie Dimon talking about working from home versus working in the office. And he's bringing everybody back into the office in his company. And I think what he was kind of raging against, and rage is maybe a little strong, but not too strong, people who took advantage of working from home. And it's kind of you can take advantage of the more naturally. Oh, more naturally means I get to do all this stuff and I don't have to do. And some people with working from home took it as, oh, I don't really have to be available. I mean, I'm working from home Friday, so that what that really means is I'll wake up late and I'll take a long lunch with my friends. And no. If you've got to get stuff done, you've got to get stuff done. There's a whole separate question of being in the office and whether that's productive and helpful for collaboration. And I think, well, that's a whole separate subject.
Right.
Maybe we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But to me, why I'm bringing it in is you do have to understand whether you are a leader or whether you are somebody else in an organization. It's not a cop-out. It's not kind of like work from home is a little bit of a cop-out. Like, oh, I'm going to work from home. No. You should get to do things more in your own way, but the reality is there is stuff that has to get done. And sometimes, especially when you're collaborating with other people, you do have to bend and not just totally do whatever works for you.
That's right. I always use the example. I say, I'm a 3 and fact vendor, which means I naturally simplify. The IRS is not going to, buy, close enough. There's no cop out. It still has to be exact, right?
Yeah.
So we're all responsible for results. That means we work against our zone or against our strengths some of the time. But you're also bringing up something that's interesting with the Jamie Dimon example. Leaders are just searching for ways to get more done with fewer people, with fewer resources, and have more productivity.
Yeah.
And they're searching for all these solutions. There's no doubt that the work from home versus in office, that's a real thing. But if people would focus a lot more on how we're measuring productivity and performance and see if we can get people that love their job, you actually can love what you're doing if you're doing things aligned with your strengths. So ignoring this part of the person, which is how do you naturally solve problems? We're solving problems every day at work. We're making decisions, solving problems, and executing. So to ignore that people have a natural instinctive way of doing that, as a leader, you're missing this amazing tool that's going to help you have people want to work more and be productive.
Well, and part of your job as a leader is figuring out how to make that work better for more people, and then channel all that energy into productive, what the company, if it's inside a company, what the company needs.
That's right.
It's not just what each individual person needs, but it's for the good of the whole. And that's part of the trade-off, maybe. I don't always see it as being a trade-off. I think people overestimate how many times we do it on the one side and that means it has to go down on the other. No, you figure out a way to kind of lift all of it. It isn't always a trade-off. It's just how to conduct that symphony to get them playing together and make better music.
That's right. We all have to look long-term a little bit and not just these quick wins. Everybody wants the quick wins because that keeps us going.
Yeah.
But we have to look long-term. And as you're saying, the symphony, in fact, you wrote part of that in the book. I mean, talk about that, because collaboration is really critical to all this. And this is probably a good time for us to just do a quick summary of, with the model, we have the way that you achieve more naturally is through mastering the 3 C's. So the 3 C's are clarity, commitment, and collaboration. Clarity being that it all starts with the foundation of know thyself and being really clear about what is unique to you and your strengths, and understanding that enough so that you can make better decisions. Commitment is exactly that, committing those strengths on a daily, hourly basis in a way that is strategic and works for you. So that means knowing what to say no to. The key to that is knowing that mental energy that you have available to get things done and solve problems is finite. So we all focus on time management and do I have the time to do this task? But if we flip that and said, do I have the energy? Is this a good use of my mental energy? You're going to be able to get more done and understand what to say no to. And that's uniquely you.
Yeah.
You cannot follow necessarily someone else's model for how you should be spending your time. But the 3rd C is collaboration, and that's what you're getting at. And we can't all do it all on our own. Collaboration means if you have these unique strengths, you have to figure out when are you surrounding yourself with people who complement those strengths, and when do you need a clone of yourself who would do it your way.
Yeah.
So your point about the symphony, I mean, talk a little bit about how collaborative strengths work.
Well, let me start one step back and then kind of build up to the collaborative piece, because you were talking about energy and you kind of made energy versus time. And you've talked a lot about this in other areas. People should really focus more on energy management rather than time management. And I've been thinking a lot about that and listening to you talk. I think the critical part for people to understand is your energy is finite, but it's kind of less finite than your time. But the problem is your energy can be burnt through really quickly. So you can set aside lots of time, but if you're doing something that is a terrible fit for you, you're going to burn through all of that energy really fast. You'll have whatever, I don't know, 6 hours left, but you'll be totally unproductive for 6 hours. But if people think back to times when they're doing something that they love, and some of that's affect, some of it's like, I really enjoy this, I value it, but a lot of it's kind of like it fits the way you take action. When you're doing those kinds of things, you have so much energy. You'll have energy left at the end of the whatever block of time, 12 hours.
Right.
Think about kids. You'll see a kid who, oh, this kid has ADHD. And yet when that kid is allowed to do something in a way that fits them and it's something that they actually want to do, all of a sudden a lot of that attention deficit goes away and they can do it for hours and hours, and parents are amazed. Well, gosh, maybe there's a lesson to be learned for all of us. I mean, number one, do they really have ADHD? And some kids do. But the lesson for all of us is figure out those things that they seem easy for you. It's like when we talk about a flow state or sometimes a glide pattern. And if you think about what a glide means, it means you're expending very little energy to go a long way.
Right. And time flies by. You're making the point.
Time flies by.
Time flies by.
Well, time becomes not so much the thing, because before, if you focus on time management, it's like, I have to block out this much time. And then what you don't realize is, but I don't have the energy to fill up all that time. Right. So you have time and then you're unproductive. Whereas if you focus on doing things in a way that are really efficient, that glide pattern or that flow state, you can get so much done in 2 hours. You've got all that time now that is freed up. Like you got everything you needed to get done in the 12 hours you blocked out, done in 2 hours. You got 10 hours left. You can either keep going on productive things along in the same vein. Like if it's work, I'm going to tackle the next 3 steps of this project. If it's at home, it might be, other things. Oh my gosh, I have all this time freed up. But because people focus so much on blocks of time and not doing the right things in a way that fits them, they just eat it up and they don't get done. And that's why you can do more and more naturally.
Right. Do you have an example of how you do that, saying no to certain things because you're conserving energy for something? Because you're making me think of the fact that just this morning I got asked a question that was going to take using some real research and getting some details, like reading through a really detailed email in order to make a good decision. And I said, I need to conserve that energy for the few things I have this morning. I'll look at it later this afternoon. Now, people don't understand enough about instinctive strengths. They're like, it's crazy. It's going to take you 5 minutes. But it's not about the time. I just had to say, strategically, I need to wait until later. I don't know if you have an example of that resonates.
You and I do things differently. I hear your example. I'm like, well, with my initiating fact finder, usually that gives me energy to do some research. So it might not be a good distraction because maybe I'm on deadline, but that actually I do the research.
Right.
Somebody just needs to tell me it can't take longer than X amount of minutes. So there is maybe a time management thing.
It gives you energy to do that.
It gives me energy. I'm all about getting details, information, doing research.
Right.
So there, either somebody else or I need to set a time limit and say, this needs to be done in 15 minutes. And then I need to get back to the other stuff. But for me, it's kind of sort of a distraction, but it's a productive distraction for me, as long as it's something I should be spending my time on.
Yeah. It might be a follow-through thing for you.
Well, but that's where I said I'd get back to collaboration, because that's really what you asked me about. Collaboration then helps. So for you, I think a lot of times the first question is, do you, Amy Bruske, need to do the research on this, or is there somebody else who can?
Right.
and therefore maybe should be doing it. So if you just think about you and me collaborating, I don't think I do this to you, and if I do, I hope you push back. I shouldn't come to you and say, Amy, I was thinking about this. We really need to find out more about this, and we need to go deep into the history of it, or would you do that for me and let's talk? I mean, that's nuts.
Sure.
That should be something I would
Yeah.
do. But then if it's something where we're doing something together and you realize, well, this will go much more smoothly if we do some more research, you should bring that to me.
Right.
And say, David, do this. Please don't spend more than 20 minutes because I don't think it's worth more than that. And then I can do that and then we can get together. And so that's where now collaboration starts opening up a whole new avenue.
Right.
You would have done it, maybe because, oh gosh, and this is a trap people fall into. They do it because, well, they want to be nice. They want to get along with the people in the office. Well, they asked me, would I? So I'm going to say yes. Well, don't.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to develop. It's almost that skill of politely declining things. As you were saying, it might be, I'll do it later, but sometimes it's, no, I don't think I should do that later or ever.
Right.
And finding out ways. It's not, again, like your example with the IRS. You don't tell the IRS I'm not going to, but you can set up a dynamic where someone else, a spouse, or please get a Rolodex. Well, that's an old reference. Get other people who can help you do that.
That's right.
Accountants, if it's your taxes and you can afford to.
Yeah, and what you're describing too is a strengths-based environment in an organization, or just if it's you and some other partner, whomever it is, there has to be mutual respect, understanding that diversity is a good thing. And then working with someone, so you and I have fairly opposite results in one of the modes, but not in a lot of the other ones. That person might drive you crazy if you don't understand that this isn't something personal. So if David asks me to justify, right, one of my decisions, I'm going to understand you need some of that information. There is a multiplier effect that you get when you get the right people in the room making the right decisions around the right kind of actions.
Yeah.
So if you understand that as an organization, it's okay if someone pushes back. Like that's it. Just there's this speed at which we can get things done, and we get a multiplier effect. And
Yep.
we've seen that with our own team and our own staff and a lot of our clients. It's just you have to buy in. You have to be all in that this actually matters,
Yeah.
and that people that getting people to work against their grain is not your best strategy.
Yeah, well, and we've done research on it. And we actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we haven't looked at the kind of time and energy functions. But in terms of the quality of results, we've seen that repeated in our research, the teams that have a better diversity of conative talent, so people do things in different ways so that it's not just one track, those teams get better results than the teams that are overloaded with too much of a good thing. So you and I both share an initiation and quick start. So, we improvise, that's more counteract fact or follow through, sorry. But with quick start, we take risks, we experiment, brainstorm,
Yeah.
and that's great. But we need somebody else in the room who's going to push back on that when it goes too
Sure.
far and say, hey, but what is working? Let's stick with that. But yeah, those teams get better results. Now I'm thinking we need to do the research and find out, do they take less time to get those better results? I don't know how we would measure the mental energy.
Yeah.
Maybe we could with
They
like
would have to
QEEG analysis.
Yeah. And it's self-reporting. But yeah, we've had universities even do the exact same kind of studies, and we know that when there's measurable results, those teams get better grades on a project. Let's say that kind of thing.
All right, so we've been talking about collaboration, but I kind of want to get back to a little bit of the individual stuff because frankly, it starts there, and I think that's the easiest piece, especially for people who haven't used Kolbe as much. Like, oh my gosh, layering in all these other people, it's great. I see why it's important, but can we start maybe more with me? So you mentioned 3 C's, clarity, commitment, and collaboration. I'm going to get back to clarity a little bit. And I'll say a couple things, but I really want to hear what you have to say about it. So first, in a general way, like number one, this concept is not new. The Greeks talked about know thyself. It's really important. I want to put it in a little bit of context. You should know lots about yourself. So we focus on the conative piece, which is the way you take action. of course you should spend time also thinking about, well, what are my cognitive strengths? My smarts, my intellect, my learned skills. Are you great at math? Are you great at writing? Think about all that stuff so that you have a good sense of where it goes. Same thing with your affect, your emotional side. Are you an extrovert versus an introvert? Whichever test you want to take, MBTI, DISC, Strengths Finder, whatever. Think about all that stuff. That's really important. But then on this conative piece, the way you take action, obviously we'd encourage you, yes, take a Kolbe A index to discover those strengths. But then think about the way they fit into what you do, and the tasks that you have to do. And by the way, this is not just an at work thing. Your conative strengths are you 24/7. Right. So it applies just as much personally. But Amy, go a little deeper on the way people can just figure out how to tap into the conative piece.
Sure. And let's just clarify again, the conative piece, these are your striving instincts. This is an instinctive need to take action in a certain way. And it is important, just like you said, to understand this 3 parts of the mind model, because here's why getting clarity is so hard. And that's because some of you have gotten to the point in your career where you are cognitively so skilled at certain things, and it's been reinforced for so long that if you're not really clear about your instinctive need to take action, I think that people keep getting positive reinforcement for working against their strengths. So you do have to look at the whole thing. And frankly, you mentioned the affect, or what's the personality or your feeling part of you. It was so important that I discovered I was more of an introvert, because I always felt guilty. And my husband jokes that I don't like people. And I love being around people, but I only have so much energy to give, right? And so understanding that about myself gave me a more whole picture. But these striving instincts are at the base of who you are and how you get things done. And so being able to be really clear about that is one of the best things ever to let go of some good advice that you may have gotten over time.
Yeah.
So one thing is, you may be in a career where you're getting reinforced for something that is really difficult for you.
Yeah.
That happened to me. I was in a career where I was absolutely moving up the corporate ladder, so to speak, in a way that was totally working against my grain. So the minute I got my Kolbe results and actually sat down and had Kathy Kolbe say, wait, but what is success to you? I realized how much I was working against that, right? So clarity is, I took my Kolbe index, I had to live with it for a while. I had to revisit it over time, and then keep reminding myself that even though I'm capable of something, these are really my unique strengths.
Well, yeah, and I want to interrupt you there, because I think that's what throws people off so often, is because Kolbe doesn't measure what you can and can't do. It's what you will and won't do over time. So what you're describing is, sure, you could do those things.
Right.
And especially for people, I think, early career, they start doing things that need to get done, and they get kudos, which early in your career means promotions and more money.
Right.
And people want the promotions and more money. Right. So they fall into this trap of, well, now I'm doing these things that I'm really good at, but they're life sucking, they're energy sucking. It's not, I don't have the joy of accomplishment in them, and it's hard for me to get them done, even though I can. Well, how do you step away from that?
That's even though you can't, or just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
And so that's where understanding that, and frankly accepting it, not feeling guilty. I think a lot of us grew up in family environments or school environments that reinforced a certain way of taking action. So there's a level of guilt around letting some of those things go and really embracing who you are. And then there's something that you and I have been saying for years is good advice gone bad. There's all this good advice floating around out there that will work for some people, but maybe don't work for you. Either it goes way too far and gets applied toward everything, or what we see really commonly is it gets applied to every person, and that's not true for you. So clarity is one thing. When you start moving to that commitment step where you're making decisions every day, you cannot do that effectively if you can't let go of some of the good advice you've heard over the years. So I don't know what it is for you, but...
Well, I mean, an easy one that pops to mind when you're talking is finish what you start.
Right. Finish everything that you start.
Yeah, finish everything that you start. So I'm a 2 and follow through. That does not work for me.
Right.
And I think it's changing, especially as maybe sometimes we overemphasize and lionize, make heroes out of entrepreneurs who do these big things. And you hear the stories of, well, they started something and they stopped it and they failed and they moved on. So, but that's great. Like for me, as a counteracting follow through, I need to be able to start things, get into them, and then move on. I should not be the one finishing it up.
Right.
Now, if the company needs it to be done because it's a really important initiative, then I, as the leader of the company, shouldn't make the entire company operate like me, where it's, oh, I finish it, but I don't start it all the time.
Right.
Or other way around. I start it, but I don't finish
We
it.
need some things finished, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And so 3 parts of the mind. Cognitively, I need to be smart enough to know, okay, this is an important initiative that needs to be seen through to the end, but I shouldn't be the one finishing it.
Right.
But that also means as an individual, I need to have the opportunity to start stuff that doesn't get done.
Right. Back to the mental energy is finite too. Let's say at home you've got a bunch of projects that are half done. You gotta, sometimes that's okay, and you gotta let it go. Right?
Yeah, now, but that's a good example of the reality that we live in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fine, I'm at home, I should be able to start projects and not finish them. Well, yeah, but you do have to be smart about it. So if it's a project where, oh, I need to replace the toilet, and you take the old toilet off, but you never put the new one on, well, that project needs to get finished. Like,
Right.
you got to go to the bathroom, sorry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
prioritize, finish that one. Again,
That's
maybe
right.
I shouldn't be doing that at all. Maybe I should get a plumber to do that one, even though I can. This is actually a real world example for me. So at the risk of going too far on the bathroom stuff, I just am going to do it. So one time I thought, I can do this. Like, it's not that hard. It's you take one off, you put a new one on. So I learned it. I did it. My wife really thought it was a bad idea because it was going to be unsuccessful, but I actually wanted to. It was successful, did not have leaks, did not have problems. But after I did it the one time, it's like, great, check that one
We're
off.
not doing that again.
I do not need to do that again.
Yeah.
Took me longer than it would take other people, partly because it was my first time. But so I'm not saying don't do those things. Like, I enjoyed the challenge of, I've never done this, I'm going to try it out.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who would do it once, and the pressure might come from inside, like, okay, well, now that I know that I can,
Right.
it's a waste of money to pay a plumber to do it.
Sure.
Or it could come
That's
from
reality.
outside. It could be my wife. Like, what's your problem? Why do you have to have a plumber
my
do
dad
this? You
always
should do
fixed
it.
all this stuff.
Right, my dad fixed it. Why can't you?
Yeah. Well, I think, and let's talk about, let me give one example of bad advice for me, because I think that very early in my career, I used to be a corporate trainer and I would do presentations, and it was always do not wing it. Have all your notes written out, stick to the script. I was handed scripts because I was doing cookie cutter trainings, and it was a 2-week long training.
Yeah. Well, and another corollary to that, as a lawyer, we often learn this: never ask a question you don't know the answer
Right.
to. Like, you're crazy.
Right.
And maybe in trial, but you might have gotten the same kind of advice. Like,
Yeah.
when you're working with people, you shouldn't ask questions unless you know the answer.
That's
But
right. And,
that's
and
kinda
here's-
silly,
this
especially
is a,
for you.
This is a script that's been proven. Study the script, memorize the script. I immediately figured out that I had to have bullet points, and I would follow the flow because the flow made sense. It was building in a way that totally
Yeah.
worked. But that was terrible advice. I do my best work when the night before I can sit down and I get all my best ideas. So anyone forcing me to say, I need all of your script and what are you
Yeah.
talking about? It is never going to be quality, because those ideas, as much as I could force myself to sit down, they don't come
Yeah.
to me
Well-
until 10 o'clock the night before. I cannot recreate that.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't
And-
force it.
So back to this whole good advice gone bad thing. I think one of the big general issues, and you touched on it before, is one size does not fit all with advice. So I'll keep going with your metaphor about acting and script memorizing and stuff. There are some people who think, well, there is one way to teach acting. Like, oh, you should be a method actor, and if you haven't gone through this process, you're not legit. Well, that doesn't work for somebody who's great at improv. But the improv person also shouldn't say, well, the only way you should learn to be a great actor is by learning to be great at improv. No, like, different things are going to be successful for different people. So you don't take somebody who's naturally gifted with improv and say, oh, forget about that. You need to learn to be a method actor. And it's this grueling process. You're going to ruin that person. You're going to take somebody who would have been amazing and you're going to make them mediocre at best. And by the way, they probably won't ever do it long term. And this gets to what we talked about in the model you keep talking about is this sustainable success. So if you take that natural improv person, whether they're acting or in business or in their personal life, and you say, no, make it methodical, have this long process to it. They will do it for a little while maybe because, again, this isn't can or can't. So they can, but it just feels so terrible to them. And like, okay, yeah, never mind. I thought I wanted to be in theater, but if this is what that means, I'm out.
Well, I think there's some famous actors that did not do well when they tried to switch up some of that. Sometimes it works, right? But
actors,
it's not sustainable.
Artists, athletes. Right. I mean, and
athletes, you see that all the time. Right?
Yeah.
There is some sweet spot on a certain position that you play or one thing that you're brilliant at, right? Your true gift, and then you have to expand and it doesn't work for you. So we do this to people all the time, everyone. And let's actually switch this up and talk about our personal lives, because you're making me think about coaches and I immediately start thinking about parents. So we're both parents. It's human nature to want to help your kids get things done, do things in a way where it works for them. And so what we do is we say, hey, this is what worked for me when studying or when organizing myself or whatever. And we are sometimes inadvertently imposing our method on a child where that's not natural for them. So talk a little bit about what we do with parents and kids and how we want to help.
So I think the most important thing is getting alignment in terms of our approach with parents, because not everybody has the same approach, but we feel strongly that the most important role for a parent is to understand the kid's natural instinctive strengths and then help them develop those strengths. Now, if we're talking other things like values, that's affect. So no, I'm not an advocate as a parent to say, oh, let the kids come up with any values they want. Like you and I both taught our kids values like, be honest, don't steal, stuff like that. Those are not necessarily negotiable. But when it comes to doing things and accomplishing things, parents should understand my kid might not be like me. So I'm an initiating fact finder. I gather lots of information and I share it. Not all of my kids are initiating fact finders. And if I try to force that method onto my kid, it's not going to serve them well. So my role is to be a guide in terms of conative strengths. And this is one of the reasons you and I view this as a mission. It's something that we really need to get out into the world, because we've seen way too often where parents, they mean so well, they just don't know about this conative part of the mind. So when you don't know about it, the obvious thing that you would do is you would just, okay, well, what has worked for me? Who am I? I'm going to teach my kids, oh, this is what works because it worked. That's my experience. That's my perspective. And you don't even think, well, there are other ways of tackling that problem because it's how you do it instinctively. So it's just, there it goes. When you can learn about this, just learning the concept helps parents understand there are times I need to sit back, observe, learn what my kid needs, and you'll be a better guide, coach, parent for that.
That's right.
That child.
And help that child take in some of what the teacher is suggesting and telling them and help filter that a little bit. Because it's not like you can tell the teacher you are still responsible for an excellent end result, whatever that is. Learning still has to happen. A report still needs to be turned in. But I see how many times the method by which a child gets there is imposed. And I'll never forget when my kids were little, teachers said, hey, the minute you get home, make sure your kids sit down and do their homework right away. And that was one thing. The second thing was...
Which is bad advice for almost every single kid in the world, but that's a different subject.
But especially for my one kid.
Yes.
And then the second thing was... make sure they do their homework in the exact same spot every day. Designate this little corner, and that's your homework corner. So my daughter is someone that absolutely needs to, first of all, bounce around from topic to topic energizes her. Not doing things in the same way every day, not unlike your strengths, David. But she also has a need to be physical and learn in a more tactile way in her implementer number. So coming home at the end of the day where she had to sit still, for a majority of the day and then say, okay, now sit down and do more of that was terrible. And I think that's true energy wise for a lot of kids. But she did her homework in a different place every day. We have a tree house. She would go up in the tree house. One day she would sit in the trampoline. The next day she would be, down in front of the TV, and actually noise helped her. So to say, let's not have any noise and distractions, she actually got more done with that. So as parents, we need to challenge ourselves to make sure that we are helping the child discover their strengths. That's what you started with. So this whole clarity, it's hard when you're a kid, but watch them. Like just observe when they're in the zone and do their best work. And then have that ability to step back and keep looking at the end result they're trying to get to. Give them some freedom. And it's true for everyone in your life, by the way. All of your most important relationships will go more smoothly if we allow that other person to be free to be themselves.
Yeah.
Think of all the fights you could save with your kids if you're not imposing exactly how to clean their room or whatever it is.
I do want to push it further than that, though. It's not just giving the other person the ability to do it their way. That's the first step, and it's really important. But I lobby so hard for going the next step, which is actually appreciating that they do it differently than
Absolutely.
you. So it's almost like you can be tolerant of people who are different than you. To have a great relationship, it needs to be more than just tolerance. It needs to be, oh my gosh, I love that you are that way.
Right.
Sometimes it's selfish. Like my wife and I are very different on the follow through, the system structure. I love that we're different because she's great at she's great at it, and she naturally does the planning and the systems. And that benefits me so much because it does make our lives run more smoothly. But she also values that when that system breaks down, I naturally step into that void and like, okay, great. What can we experiment with and make up and fix? And for me, it's not even a matter of getting back to that plan. It's like, great, we can do something else entirely.
Right.
But if we only tolerated those differences, if it was, for me, just kind of a roll of the eyes, there she goes planning again. I guess I'll let her do her thing. That's not a thriving relationship.
Right. It's not something she's doing to you. It is something that is
Right.
really can be for you, right? And she
Right.
has a need to do things that
Yeah.
way. So
And even when
appreciate it.
even if it doesn't directly benefit me,
Yeah.
I think we can all find ways to really just appreciate and value when somebody else is doing something that is their sweet spot. Again, totally independent from you. You can watch that and you go, oh my gosh, that is a beautiful thing to watch.
Right.
Kind of like when you watch a kid that's just got this unbridled joy at the silliest thing, like, oh, a leaf is blowing down the street in front of them and they chase it and they're laughing. It's not about, well, this made something better for you. It's just the pure enjoyment. That's the kind of enjoyment people get
That's
when
right.
they get to use their MO.
That's right. And that just reminds me of one thing we get asked a lot is there one best MO for significant other kind of relationships? There really isn't.
No.
We know people that are identical in the way they solve problems. We know people that are complete
Yeah.
opposites. So it's just that appreciation and respect and actually allowing that person to be themselves.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is there isn't one. It's not. A lot of times people want to know, okay, should it be opposites attract or should we be complementary? The perfect MO is the one that you appreciate. So I always tell people, learn to appreciate what you have rather than look for something else.
That's right. David, to wrap up, let's answer the question, why write this book and why now? Why does the world need to know about doing more and more naturally now?
I mean, for you and me, I think it was just, we get frustrated when we hear the stories from our clients of, oh, I wish I knew this sooner. So I'll just answer for me. We've talked about it. I think it's similar for you. It's not that now is the one and only time where the book has to be written. It's just more, it kept frustrating me. Why don't more people know this? We need to get this out to more people, and that's mostly communication. It's about how can we connect with people and show them this will make a difference in your life, really practically. If it's theoretical or if it's just in business, and look, the book talks about business because a lot of our clients, that's the application. But I just want more people to understand it so they take it. And then we were talking about parenting. Honestly, I hope they take it. And then the two areas they push are, how do I use this with kids and younger people, whether they're your kids or just other ways you touch younger people? And then also to the extent you influence other people, and that might be at work, it might be through charitable things that you do, giving the message to other people and helping, especially if you were like a business leader and you kind of control the way people operate, or at least can mold some of that. Once you know this, you'll be better at molding that into ways that are going to help them.
Yeah, I don't think it's overstating it to say that at Kolbe Corp, we get to hear every day, I discovered something that has completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And that happened to me. It absolutely changed my life to learn my strengths. And I was able to finally let go of the person I was trying to be. And I was trying to be like my family and my parents. And we hear that from people. So it can be life-changing to discover your strengths. And we are on a mission to do that. And especially right now, we keep hearing that people have a struggle in our work life. We know it's always a challenge sometimes in our relationships, but in a work life, there are so many people that don't have that joy in their job and in work. So we know this is going to make a huge difference. Discover your strengths. I mean, that's our challenge to all of you.
Yeah.
Because we hear it every day and we live it. So, we challenge all of you to join us to doing more and more naturally.
So, yeah, with my 8 in Fact Finder, you mentioned, literally every day. I think you said literally.
On Saturdays and Sundays.
Well, no, but I think even then, but I started thinking, wait, can we literally make that claim? And then I thought back to literally yesterday, you and I were having a conversation with a client who said verbatim, it has changed my life.
Absolutely.
Personally and professionally.
That's right.
So now I'm
This week alone, I've heard it for three different clients. So we know it can make a difference. And if it's not for you, then it's for someone in your life. So think about your most important relationships.
Yeah.
It is there for all of us to start challenging ourselves. I'm now asking myself even more often, and I've been living with this for a long time, is where am I on the do more continuum? I've been challenging myself lately to say, am I just busy, or are these activities really going toward what matters most?
Yeah.
And how am I using my strengths? Because that's a lifelong journey, is how to use your mental energy effectively. So it's nonstop. But man, is it joyful and fun and amazing when you can do it.
All right. So now we told lots of people why. I think we need to tell them a couple basics about how. So I think the obvious one, go to Kolbe.com, take your Kolbe A Index, have your kid take their student aptitude quiz if they're younger, and learn those strengths about you. Sure, buy the book, but it's really about the mission, I guess. So then the one other thing I'll say is, if you don't want to take your index or buy the book, the other thing you can do to tap into some of this stuff is just, if it's meditation that helps you, but just get to a place where you can kind of push the other things aside and think, when I have been in that flow state, what did it look like for me? What's the way I take action? Even if you don't take your Kolbe index, I think you'll be able to figure out a couple of those points where it's, oh, yeah, I am that person who asks questions first and gets more information and then shares it with the people around me. So one way or another, figure this stuff out, because it'll make a huge difference. What else? What am I missing?
And I was going to say, once you figure that out, share it with other people so that they understand how to work with you effectively as well. And join our community. Share your stories. Join our community. Follow us on social, because this is a whole group of people that are focused on helping people find the freedom to be themselves and just living better, more productive lives. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Powered by Instinct. This show is brought to you by Kolbe Corp, a company that helps leaders and organizations thrive using the only instinctive strengths assessment on the market. If you enjoyed this episode, then follow Powered by Instinct wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or join us online at Kolbe.com/podcast for all the latest episodes.